What we're going to be shooting into today is a video that is going to challenge you to think for yourself. Now, this idea of thinking for yourself is that we have something known as the Overton window, which dictates to us the range of acceptable thought. Now, this Overton window is overall a positive thing because it's outside the Overton window that you could jump out of a building to maybe outpace an elevator, right? If I say, you know what, it's faster to jump out of the building and just jump right out the window instead of taking the elevator, it's just faster. That's outside the Overton window. It's outside the Overton window to go and harm people, and that's also a good thing, right? To be a hateful person is outside the Overton window. That's a good thing. We want that. At the same time, there's also other ways of thinking that are outside of that window, such as, what is your life really all about? Is your life really just about fulfilling some kind of consumer culture and just living the life that's kind of been laid out to you by the system? Or should you think a little bit outside the box and look at your life in a more deep and profound way? I mean, think about it. We're sitting here, look at this beautiful environment. Look at where we are, look at this earth, breathe in the air, look around, wake up! And what you'll realize is that the little hamster cage that you've been put into as far as the mental prison, there is a lot more to life than that. So in this video, what I'm doing is using a lot of different Zen techniques. And in Zen teaching, what they do, what a guru will do in Zen, is they'll kind of whack you over the head with some kind of weird or outlandish thought, because what they want to do is to smack you out of this kind of daze that you're in and get you to think outside the box. Even if you get all this down, you're still going to die someday. So don't get it in your head like, I can start living life when I get all these things Owen's talking about down. You're still going to be dead anyway. All this is just nothing more than a glorified hobby. Do you understand that? Like, to me, there's no difference between being a homeless person and a super rich person. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen to the homeless person? What's going to happen to the super successful person? Yeah, does it matter how long their life is? Think about it. If the universe is around for like trillions of years or whatever the physicists have figured out that it is, right? And even when it eventually collapses, there'll be some new universe, presumably. So if universe is around for infinite amount of time and you live to be 110 versus 40, does it really matter? No, it doesn't matter. So it's like personal preference. What do you like better? If you like derping around, I'm not here to criticize that. I don't care. You know, it's like you see your friends that are derping, they like being miserable. It doesn't matter. If it's like, what's this thing that people pretend like people don't like being miserable? Lots of people love being miserable. They love it. They're addicted on it like crack. They're addicted on their misery. They're addicted on their limitations. They love their limitations. So I'm not here to talk anybody out of it. Do whatever you want. I don't care what you want to do. You know, do whatever you want. Just if you want to sit there all day, just like, do it. If whatever floats your boat, man, I don't care. It's just that if you happen to want a different way, that's where the study of personal growth comes in. That's where that comes in. If you just happen to want to do it, then you can do it, right? If you just happen to want to. So the first thing that I would ask you is, what do you want? What do you want? And what I would say is this. Like I mentioned, I don't think that it is any better to be someone who's fully developed or not fully developed. It's just personal preference. But here's why I chose to try to become more developed. Here's why I chose it. So what I did was I dug in and I started talking to different people. I wanted to know what's the better way. I was genuinely curious what the better way is. So what I did was I started asking friends of mine what their lives were like. I started auditing it, okay? So I'd go to friends of mine that were very chill, you know, maybe they like to get high, they like to watch a lot of television, and I started digging in because I was curious. I was really curious. I considered every single lifestyle, and I still do. So I would say to them, do you like smoking weed and watching TV all night? Do you prefer it? Do you enjoy it? What do you get out of it? And, you know, how does it make you feel? Do you like this sort of relaxed feeling with low responsibility? What's your preference? I wanted to know. Likewise, I was so extreme about this that I would even go to places like Nepali Coast in Hawaii, where you can actually meet people that live basically as minimalists in like a campground in Hawaii. You ever think of doing that? You should. Why haven't you thought of that? Honestly, why haven't you considered being a minimalist? I know minimalists. I think that's an incredibly viable lifestyle, minimalism. I know a buddy of mine named Tynan. His main goal, he'll make some little small internet marketing funnel, And then basically what he does is he has an electric skateboard and he has a camper, okay? And he'll go around in his camper from city to city. He lives in effect for free. He takes his electric skateboard and he just skateboards around the city. I had to have a legitimate, honest dialogue with myself about whose life was better. I did. And I'm not even sure that he's not doing better. He actually might be. Have you ever heard that old story? They say, there's some fishermen on an island, and they say, hey, I'm going to fish, and some businessman comes to him and he says, you can get all your boats, and then you can hire all these fishers. He's like, and then he says, well, then what would you do? He's like, well, then when you hire all these fishermen, you can make all this money. He's like, well, then what can you do? He's like, well, then you can go buy all these more boats, and you can scale it, and you can grow it. He's like, well, then what would you do? He's like, well, then you'll have like piles and piles of money, and you'll have this big business. And he's like, well, then what can you do? And he's like, well, then you can retire on an island and fish. He's like, wait a minute, right? Now the hole in that narrative, however, is that if something goes wrong and there's no backup, then that happy little lifestyle can be flushed down the toilet very quickly. Whereas if he had he or she had a backup, then at that point there would be, you're not just completely dependent on everything kind of staying the same and being stable. But it just depends, right? I have another seminar I'm going to put out, and I get people to question the value of being a nice person, of being a good person. And I do that because I really believe that a lot of people they say they're good people literally because, here's the critique that I'm making with the quote being a good person, okay? Here's my critique. I believe that unless you can contemplate why you wouldn't be a bad person and have an honest contemplation of that, you can't choose good. Do you follow this? Because here's the problem, okay? Look at all these atrocities that you see. And basically what happens is some psycho takes control of the government and then gets all these regular average people to commit atrocities. And you keep thinking to yourself, how could that have happened? How could that have happened? Here's why it happens it's a very complex reason why it happens, but let me give one reason why it happens. The average person's version of good is just following orders, just doing what I'm told. So if someone in a position of authority says, go do this, they just listen. They just did what they're told. So the only way, in my view, that someone can be educated on how to be a good person is you got to make them pause and say, why not be a bad person? What would be the advantage of being a horrible, horrific person? And then flesh that out and look at the pros and cons of that. I hope you would determine that to be a net negative, I hope. I could show you why it is if you want. There's many reasons why it's a massive net negative, and there's many reasons why being a good person is a massive net positive. But what they do is they simplify. They're like, if you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. Here's a thought experiment. Let's do another thought experiment. What if it turned out that God was actually Satan, okay? What if God was Satan? Okay, because they always say in the Bible, in effect, that God is more powerful than Satan, right? And that if you're good, you go to heaven, and if you're bad, you go to hell. Now, what if it was the opposite, okay? What if right now you found out that if you were really, really bad, you would actually go to heaven, okay? And if you're really, really good, you would actually go to hell. And if you're really, really good, other people will say that you're a naughty, naughty person, okay? Would you still be good? Knowing that you would be eternally damned, would you still choose good? I would, but many of you wouldn't, okay? I could give you a really clear argument on why I would strive to be good, because no one's 100% good, but why I would strive to be good. I could give you a very cohesive argument of that, but most of you have never even thought of that, right? And so what happens is now, all of a sudden, when presented with the path of least resistance, like some psycho leader tells you go do this, that, the other thing, or if culture starts changing and culture starts saying you should have this belief or that belief that you know is wrong, you'll start to believe that because you're basically operating off a punishment reward system. You're just like a little automaton operating off of punishment reward. Would you like to hear my argument on why I'd say to be a good person anyway? Yeah. I'll give you some if you want. I'll keep it quick. I could make a 30-hour argument on this because I'm too verbose, but I'll make a 3-minute. The first thing that I would say is the average person, 90% of their thoughts is just how to fulfill biological drives, how to fulfill their ego needs, and social conditioning. That's the average person. And so let's think about this. Do an audit. If like 99% of your thinking is like, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm aroused, I need to go to the bathroom, I'm hungry, I want to taste this, I want to feel this, that's a huge part of your thinking. The other part is ego gratification. Do I look cool? How do I look? Do I look cool? What do they think of me? Am I getting the respect and admiration I deserve? How do I look right now? How am I dressed? What do you think? And then the other part is social conditioning. The average person just behaves in a way that they're programmed to behave. They're going off social conditioning, and then they're defending that because they've made it a part of their ego structure. So if you even show them something different than their conditioning, they feel like you're personally threatening their existence. So if that is 99% of your thinking, what I'd ask you is another question. Okay, I'm not a vegetarian, but let me ask you a question. Do most of you in this room eat steak? Do you eat cows? Under what moral justification do you eat cows? What's the basic moral justification? It tastes good, right? Yeah. Other than the taste good argument, which I also agree with, what is the next argument?
They're lesser.
You basically just say they're unconscious, right? They are unconscious. So because they're unconscious, it's okay to eat them, right? Say a fish is a little bit more clear, right? A fish, maybe a bird. What about something like a pig? I've heard that pigs are actually very cute. I've heard they're like little dogs almost, like they get domesticated. I don't want to hear it. I'm just like, plug my ears now. I don't want to know. I don't want to know this. Okay? So plug your ears. So that being the case, if you have it to where something like you're eating an animal because it's unconscious, what if it turned out that you're mostly unconscious? What if it turned out that most of your thinking is on autopilot, that you think it's you and it's not? Well, let me ask you a question. How many of you in here can get present to the moment right now and still your mind for even 9 seconds? So if you can't still your mind for 9 seconds, what does that mean about your thinking? That means that your thinking is on autopilot, which means that your thinking is not that much higher order than a cow. It's more complex, it feels real, but it's not that different. So from there, you're thinking in life, what if I die? 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 That's the wrong question. My question is, ask yourself whether or not you've even been born. I would argue with you that many of us have not even been born. If your mind is running you on autopilot right now, it's mostly just the fulfillment of biological drives, ego gratification, and social conditioning. What is there that's different about you than a cow? So what do you have to lose? There has to be something in there that puts a firm stake in the ground that says, this is me. I would rather burn in a living hell saying there was something that was me that existed than to just go with biological drives, which inherently means I'm unconscious and means I don't even exist. I'm just a mass of cells going, ugh, like that, feeling a pleasure chemical in my body. And that's also why I wouldn't do heroin, by the way. So tied all that together too. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Because I'm not a mass of cells that just sits like, Would I be curious what that would feel like? Sure. But I'm not going to do it. It's highly addictive. It's almost impossible to get off once you've tried it. It'll ruin your whole life. It's not built for you to get off of it. You want to know what happens to a heroin junkie? I mean, I'm not perfect in my knowledge of this, but my rough understanding is look at all the angles it hits you from, right? I mean, look at all the angles that it hits you from. You get the high of your life by not having to accomplish anything, more high than you could ever get, like more high than you could get if you accomplish everything, but you get the high of your life, but you've accomplished literally nothing other than injecting a potentially disease-infected needle in your arm, okay? Then, or whatever way you choose to consume it. Then from there, you come out of it and you probably have less attention span, you probably have less ability to focus, you're probably just craving that drug again. It's actually rotting your brain out, and you have a little bit less money and your life's a little bit less good. So of course, what's the first thing you're going to want to do? If your life's a little bit less good, you have a little bit less you have a little bit less concentration. Also, what do you have a little bit less of? It's called impulse control. Say that word, impulse control. You have a little bit less impulse control. So now if you have less impulse control, less focus, your life, and by the way, your life didn't get better, your life got worse. So you have even more reason to want to do it now because your life just got worse, right? Now heroin or crystal meth or things like that have incredibly low rates of people getting off them. People who've gotten off them, they are champions. But I'll tell you the secret worst thing that no one talks about with drug addiction. If I were to exert a 10 out of 10 a day in willpower in order to have a good, strong, productive day, let's say that to have a great, productive day, I had to exert a 10 out of 10 in willpower. To have an incredibly productive day, to build out a business, to build systems, to get my life moving forward, to learn new skills, to be good to my family and loved ones, be a good parent, be a good friend, and I had to exert a 10 out of 10 willpower. For somebody who's done hard drugs, they probably have to exert 100 out of 10 willpower to just stay clean. To just stay clean. And that can last them for years because of that addiction. Just staying clean. Like, that Elon Musk type character who you see that is operating at the highest level, a heroin junkie who got off of it is probably exerting more willpower than Elon just to stay clean. So that is why I will not go near that stuff. Zero interest in going anywhere near anything like that, especially not to turn myself into the exact automaton that I described that I wouldn't want to be, right? So we're so much focused on things like pleasure, right? For example, let's go even more philosophical. How about the existence of God itself, right? Okay, so let's say that we pretty much know for sure that there's God because there's something here. So whether or not that's God, like, you know, the guy with the beard who's judging you from the Bible, maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Don't mean to offend anybody. I'm sure you know, you all, the Christians here, you know, it's 100% that, 100%, but no other possibility. But for the weirdo people that are going to burn in hell, basically what I would ask you is, we know there's some kind of God, right? So then what we know is, okay, well, what would God want? And you just ask yourself that. You don't need someone to tell you that in a book. What would God want? What are the principles that God brought down here to the earth? And then what you'd ask yourself is, if I were to execute that, but God never saw it, let's say that God never knew all the great things you did. He or she or it, probably it, never knew. Okay? Never knew. Probably he, she, and it, right? Never knew, right? Would you still strive to be a good person? Ask yourself that. What if they never knew? There was no reward waiting. What if the people who did things that were bad had a greater reward on this earth? They never knew. Well, what I'd say to you is, part of being born as a second birth means that you say to yourself, who am I? What am I? I'm not going to wait for my biology in order to run me. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a little bit of the downside of this. Okay, so I've been basically able to beat my biology, but I don't necessarily think that's good. I beat it to the point it's a little bit freaky, okay? So I've trained my body to gain energy from work. That's pretty weird stuff. I also can focus and lock in from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. And I can do this for months at a time. And I pretty much just like am tireless. So I talked to some friends of mine about this because I have other friends that have done this, okay? The good side of it means that you can produce, you can build an 8-figure business, or you can be really competent, you can be a great teacher, you can do a lot of amazing stuff. The downside is, and I'm gonna be honest, okay, very, very honest, I sometimes worry that I could have a heart attack at a young age. The reason why, okay, look, I mean, part of the problem with going off the script is there are problems with it. So I do wonder that sometimes. I'll tell you why. Because it's a little bit weird, but I do sometimes wonder what I've done to my body, because it's weird that I didn't get sick for almost a decade, and it's weird to me that I don't get tired. That is really, really weird, okay? And I technically don't know what that's doing to me, technically, because they don't talk a lot about, I'm kind of going without a map here. You know what I'm saying? I want to be clear, I do get tired, but my version of tired is very different than most people's version of tired, okay? So I'm kind of operating a little bit without a map here. So I think there's one of two things I'll answer in one sec. There's one of two things going to happen. Either A, I think I'll probably, if I don't get in an accident, I think I'm probably going to live very long. I think that may happen because if my immune system is on this much of a run, and there's just a lot of different reasons I think I might live very long, but also I've seen some people that they push themselves and they just conk out early. So I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I've actually went and talked to a bunch of experts about it, but I don't technically know. Now, where it gets weird is How much do I care? And you can probably guess, I care to the extent that I wouldn't be there for my children, and I care to the extent that I wouldn't get to leave the legacy that I want to leave, but I'm not really that concerned about the length of my life. And the reason why is because you need to understand, it's all short. It's all short. Whether you live to be 120, 110, 90, or you go out like Kobe at 41, it's all too short. What are you worrying about Kobe for? It's all too short, okay? It's all sucks. It's way too short, you know, right? It's amazing to look at a guy like Kobe Bryant when he passes, because it makes you realize that if you're working towards a better life and you're not working to enrich yourself spiritually, it is literally pointless. The only point of it is maybe to recognize how pointless it is. That's sort of the point, right? You go build all the success, you do all this and that, the other thing, to realize how utterly meaningless it is. Look at Kobe, everything he had going for him. That dude was probably close to a billionaire, in that range, something like that, maybe $500 million, I don't know. He had worldwide fame. He could fly around a helicopter, he could do whatever he wants. And look what happened to him. Poof, out like a light. The thin membrane between life and death is so tiny, just planet Earth itself has to be just the right distance from the sun. It has to have just the right things going on in the ecosystem. Your body has to have just the right things going on in it for your consciousness even to be here. And yet you're sitting there focused on the Kardashians, right? What are you thinking? It is fake. It's not real life. You're living a fiction. You're in a derped out, asleep state, focusing on the wrong things. Literally, that's what you're doing. Now, how did I come to a lot of these realizations? It's kind of weird, okay? I'll tell you how I did it. It's kind of weird. I wanted to be really, really good at some of these kind of like petty level things, okay? I just wanted it. I wanted to be really good. I'm going to be real, okay? I'm going to say something I'm embarrassed about. I wanted to be the best ever, okay? I wanted to be the best in the world. Now, by the way, do you see how delusional and egotistical that is? The best in the world. I'm the best in the world. You know who I personally thought was the best in the world in my personal view? Kobe. And where's he now? What does it matter if he's the best in the world right now? It doesn't, right? But I wanted to be the best in the world. I wanted to be the greatest public speaker of all time. And I wanted to be the best in my previous field in the field. And I didn't care who had the reputation for it, so I never talked about that publicly, or if I did, it was rare. But I wanted to know. I wanted to know that I could be the best at it. I wanted to be able to perform miracles for my clients. I wanted clients to come on programs with me, be jaw-dropped, be inspired. I wanted to show the world what I could do. I want to show that in my public speaking, and I want to show that in my previous craft in the field. I just wanted it. And so what I did was I wanted to learn how to make my mind so present and so just locked in that I could operate at the highest levels. This is what I wanted to do, okay? Why? Probably not the most healthiest of reasons, right? But I just wanted to do it, okay? It was something I wanted. And I went out and I did it day after day after day after day. Many of you have seen me public speaking. I would teach live events back in the day. And there's two funny things I used to do. Most people don't even realize this. One thing that I used to do was, just like this, I would do a free event because I was curious if I could make a seminar that appeared as though it was planned out of nothing. I wanted to make it look like a cohesive seminar out of nothing, okay? Think about that for a minute. That's kind of funny, right? I challenged myself to do it. I found, because I'd be doing seminars that I'd plan out, and I'd have these little chunks where I'd go off script for maybe 10 minutes. And I always loved those improvised, like kind of in the moment, off script moments. I love them. And I used to think, what if I could make 5-hour seminars off script and I could do them? And that's why I kept teaching the free tour. That was my main reason. All my business, it's so funny. Everybody always has these different theories on why our team and my business, we do what we do. And it's always revolving around money. What's the reason they do the free tour? They must get money like this. They must get money like that. No. You're thinking too small. No. Money was not enough for my ego. My ego needed more. My ego needed immortality, okay? I wanted to be the best that ever did it. That was what I wanted, okay? Yeah, money, not enough. That's too temporary. Not enough for Owen, okay? I needed immortality. It's completely delusional and dumb. But, you're young. You're trying to figure out your way in life. I just wanted it, you know? A lot of people want different stuff. That's what I wanted, right? I was young, I had light level autism, I couldn't relate with people. Look, you know the truth, right? When you've had a pretty rough upbringing, you get these delusions of grandeur. It's just the truth, right? It's the way that you cope with the pain that you've been through. You've been through all this pain, you're like, I will be the greatest, right? Now I know it's dumb, now I know, but at the time, that was meaningful to me, okay? That was meaningful to me in that paradigm. Look, it gave me something to do while I was curing my autism, okay? Gave me something to focus on, right? Like, they're all gonna see, you know, gave me something to do when I was in a lot of pain, right? Later you realize how dumb it is, but at the time it kept me going, you know? Gave me something to do. It's just a hobby. Like I said, what I say at the start of the seminar, it's all just a hobby. Whether or not you are a minimalist, whether or not you're some whacked out crackhead, whether or not you're like the best speaker in the world, it doesn't matter. It's a hobby. I just wanted to try to do it. I was like, let's see if I could do it. Let's go do it. So I tried. So I would do free events as often as I could. Anytime I could get in front of a crowd, I would do free events to work on my improvisational speaking skills. Then I have a team of editors assemble the video, but I always do the final cut so I can watch the footage and see what I would have done different. I would view it like going into battle every single time. How can I get a little bit better? How can I get a little bit better? How can I get a little bit better? I would try different vibes, different energy, different tone. I would do some speeches that you guys have never seen released because they're so vulgar, where I would make up some word, I would take one word and do an entire 3-hour speech using that same word in a sentence for 3 straight hours, okay? I'd say like a word like, you know, like blowing loads, or I'd say a word like Birkenstock sandals, and I would do a 3-hour seminar just saying that same word in a sentence again and again and again, because I want to see if I could do it. I would do seminars where I would make the room cry. I'd have the room crying and crying. Some of you have been to them. You've been. The room is crying their eyes out, just to see if I could do it. I would do seminars that were all funny. I would do seminars that are really intense and lock in as entrepreneurial. Or I would do weird seminars where I would read about things like magic mushrooms and LSD, and I would try to mimic my seminar to be super weird and mimic the experience of magic mushrooms or LSD or things like that. And I never even did it. And then everybody always comes up to me on the street and they're like, you must have done all these hallucinogens. There's no way you could know all this if you didn't do a hallucinogen. I'm like, no, I just went to this drug forum and I just read the testimonials about people that did drugs. There's this one, it's called like the drug forum, and it's like, and they call it Swim. Anyone here ever seen this? Yeah. It's called Swim. It's called someone, it's like, because you can't say that you did the drug, so, because it's like illegal or something, right? So they say Swim did this, or like Swim did the heroin, or Swim did the DMT, Swim did this and that. I would just read about it. I'm like, that sounds cool. I'm not gonna do it, but that sounds pretty cool because I want to be the best ever. So I didn't want to do anything to slow me down. I know that surprises you, right? I didn't want to do anything to slow myself down. So, because you also need to understand that when you're pushing yourself to those lengths, pushing yourself to those extremes, the kind of natural psychedelic experience you're gonna have are unbelievable. I mean, you're gonna go into levels of presence and like you go into a void. Like you literally will go away while you watch your body being animated, doing things that you would have thought of as impossible. You'll watch that. You'll see your body going into euphoria, going into deep emotional states. You'll get grand visions. You'll have weird things like Satori experiences where your mind just shuts off for like 3 or 4 days and you're like, you know, and you're all tripped out and things like that. You'll have all these super crazy experiences, dark nights of the soul. You can Google this stuff, right? You can Google it, okay? Right? You normally think like, no, we have to talk about it like this in a white robe. No, you can just Google it. Okay? Like I love that, it's always like, yeah, just Google, bro. Because the whole idea of spirituality is that you don't need to be in a character, right? You don't need to be the spiritual character. That's the idea of spirituality. What's more spiritual? Eckhart Tolle being like, yeah, right? Or just like some goofy person just giggling like a little kid. You could actually argue that the second one is more spiritual. Quick question on this, if it's on track, yeah?
Yeah, it was similar. What are your dreams like?
I'll get back to that, but let's keep going. So, and by the way, I also taught myself in public speaking how to go into a light level dream state in order to do these speeches. So that's sort of weird too, right? So I taught myself that. When I would go out and I'd work on my infield skills, I would literally look at my night and look at how I ran my entire night and nitpick it apart from every single behavior that I did to the emotional waves that I'd have throughout the night to the way that I would connect each thing to the next thing, and I would go over this day in and day out. It's a very powerful thing, but you need to understand that the reward here is not to have some wild, kinky dating life. The reward is the work itself. That's what people don't get in today's society. It is the work itself. The end result of like messing around with somebody or something like that, that is a 1 out of 1,000 compared to the joy and euphoria that you'll get from the work itself, okay? Especially if you're using protection, it's like even less, right? Because it's like eating a sandwich through a Ziploc bag. So it wasn't about that, right? And so, it wasn't about me, about my ability for other people to know it. I wanted to know it. That's what mattered. That's why I said if God didn't know that you're doing the right thing, what does that matter? It matters what you know. That's what you should care about. What do you think of your character? When you look in the mirror, how do you feel? Are you that person who's had that second birth? Not just that you got pumped out of your mother's womb and cried. Is that when you're born? No, it's a progression. There's a progression of waking up that we go through, and then there's a progression also of as we lose consciousness, as we get older, and we get derped out, and then we just fade away, and that's if you live long, right? So it's a progression. It's not like, and by the way, you also die before you die. Because think about it. The little baby that was you, does that exist anymore? No, it doesn't. Your personality may be very, very different from them. There'd probably be like a couple cute little elements like, oh, it's like he or she's kind of the same, like, you know, in this way from when they're one. You could sort of see the signs, but it's still not similar enough that you would view that as you, right? The person that, if you're transforming, the person who you were 5 years ago almost doesn't even exist now. There's just the same witness and consciousness seeing the same mental movie. So you're already dead. Already. It doesn't matter that you don't, why, instead of fearing death, why don't you fear never being born? Why don't you fear not achieving life? Why don't you fear not waking up? That was the bigger question that I had through my process. And so all throughout this, I pushed myself, right? I wanted to see what was possible, what I could accomplish. I would do things like seminars for 700-800 people with no mic and see if my voice could explode out onto the crowd. I would have to learn many different things. For example, I would learn how to be a non-resistant. So for you guys coming to the course this weekend, I'll teach you public speaking. And I'll teach you not only how I learn public speaking, but how our team has created many different public speakers. We've created some of the best public speakers in the world. With this kind of training, I can show anybody how to be an incredible public speaker. And I can show it to them quickly, easily, and just show them the exact things to tweak. Well, if you look at me, even though my voice might be booming and there's a lot of energy coming out of me, how tense does my body look? Right? Okay, so I had to learn the difference. They call it power versus force. How do you let go and let something move through you so there's more power rather than forcing it? Most of you, if I bring you up here, it's like crazy. You'll keep trying to force it. You'll be stuck in your head wondering what you look like. What do I look like? What do I look like? What do I look like? Then you're going to try to force it, and then very minimal energy will come out of you, and as a result of that, you're minimally powerful. These are the areas that I found to be fascinating to cultivate. I wanted to learn about that. And then I went very deep into personal growth because I wanted to look at how my entire life was laid out and see what was sucking me of energy, leaching me dry, and what was it in my life that was actually empowering me with energy. See, I don't think we talk about this a lot in society, but what I personally think, and I don't know for a fact, but this is my personal view, I think that we have energetic reserves, and I think that we can either build them up big or we go into depletion. But we don't really talk about that in our modern understanding of health. I'm not an expert on it. I can never teach that because I don't know it well enough. I can't prove it. But it's just my personal subjective opinion. That's what I think. That was how I handled my health in recent years. I said, how can I have like this massive buildup of energy? That way when I get into a room, I have this incredible focus. I have the ability to be improvisational, to be off the cuff. I want to be experiencing the play as if it's like Neo in the Matrix. You're seeing it sped up, I'm seeing it slowed down. To you, you're just experiencing it and seeing it, and it's at the normal pace. But when you're at a different level, it's slow to you. So that way you can be witty, you can have jokes off the cuff, you can work on your cadence, your tonality, your projection, your expression. If you're meeting somebody out, it's like you already know 1,000 things they're gonna say before they say it. Then you can keep kind of messing around. It's like bouncing around like a basketball. They start laughing and giggling because they've never met someone who has so much self-possession and someone who has so much ability to dictate the reality. They've never seen somebody like that before. Again, I want to emphasize, I've said this a few times, this was just a hobby. It's just a hobby. It's like, what I'm saying right now, to hear it, I bet you know what you're probably feeling? This is awesome. I want to do this. But the truth is, it's just a hobby. We're all going to go to the same place. right? You can build up this amazing life, and you're still, okay, that same heroin junkie on the street is going to the same place as Kobe Bryant, as you, as me. It's called the end of this physical body. Where we go after, that could be a different question, but you see my main point, right? As far as this experience of life. So what we need to do is we need to say to ourselves, what paradigm are you in now? What are you thinking about? Those autopilot derp circuitry that you have there, it's basically there as a default personality in case you never develop one. Okay? Okay, so all these little triggers that you have, I want approval, I want to look cool, I want this, I want that, that exists in case you never wake up. The ego basically exists so that if you never ever wake up, you never learn anything more, there's a set of autopilot preferences and responses in the brain. The autopilot thinking exists so that if you never kind of snap out of it, then at least there's something, right? It's the autopilot part of your brain. Let me ask you a question. How much percent of your thinking in a day-to-day basis is you on autopilot? And how much of it is you being proactive and actually maximally productive and getting the outcomes you want? What do you think?
8.
What's that? 99. How much of your thinking, like right now, if I bring you up here and I embarrass you, say I embarrass you, right? How overwhelmed will you feel if I embarrass you? And yet, does it matter at all? No. I mean, I could bring you up on stage right now, say all sorts of nonsense and make you feel sad and embarrassed. How would that affect your life at all? Nothing will come of that. I promise you, I've been embarrassed in the public thousands of times. You have so much catching up to do to get to my level of how dumb you could look in the public. I look so dumb in the public. You could only dream of looking as dumb as me in the public. So, I could offer $1 million award for most of you in this room to look as dumb as me in the public. You could spend the next 5 years trying to make yourself look that dumb, and you may not get there. Okay? For those of you who have never really Googled me extensively, you'll see why. Now, going from there, you're sitting there afraid. It's funny, I watch people afraid of public embarrassment, and I'm thinking, who do you think you're talking to? Who are you talking to? That's like if I got like a paper cut, you're covered in blood and sword gashes, and I'm like, look at this. Look, I'm not gonna be okay. You're sitting there, you've been cut up with a machete, you're like, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. You know, right? Okay, do some research if this surprises you what I'm saying. So, or don't, don't do any research. So, okay, so that's, so how did I handle that level of energy, right? How did I handle that level of stuff coming at me? Well, there was a petty part of me that said, Owen, there's 2 ways this can go. You can accept this and just bow down to it, and that's your story. That's how you wind up. Or you can actually take all that energy and feed it back into doing something amazing. And I went and I did that, and I did a great job. But you want to know something? At the end of the day, I'm still going to die. So end of the day, even though that what I did was good, here's why I would say it was good. It was a good alternative to apathy. Okay? So let's just say this with me. Say success is a good alternative to apathy. Okay? So that's where I would put it. I'm not like, then I rose back, made the blueprints, built the business, and then I knew who I was. No. But it was at least better than just going, well, that's just how it is. That's me. Ooh. Right? It was a more authentic response than that. That's all that it was, okay? So if you right now are poor, if you right now don't have the life you want, and you're like, you know what, I'm fed up, I'm better than this, people don't believe in me, I'm gonna prove them wrong, great. That is a really, really good first level, and I would urge you not to do what's called spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is where you're like, it all doesn't matter, so I will do nothing. Break out the weed in the video games, I'm spiritual. Look how spiritual I am. You're not spiritual. If you're spiritual, you could have stayed in presence throughout the process of rebuilding. If it's all the same, if you're so spiritual, it's all the same, you're disconnected, why not take action? See, people think that spirituality is a rationalization for non-action. Let's flip that on its head. If you're present to the moment and all is light and all is good, then why not take action during that? Think about it. Now, watch me. I'm sitting here and I'm probably about 98% present. I'm not losing energy from this. For me to sit here and go, hey, and do a seminar is no different than if I sit here and I do this. It's the exact same thing. I feel no difference at all doing this or teaching you. So why is it that we say if we're spiritual that then what it's about is not taking action and sitting and meditating in the ashram? Well, here's why they say it. They say it because most people that are taking action are feeding attachment. That's why. They're feeding attachment. They're feeding the ego and they're feeding attachment to the physical. But in reality, you can be working and hustling from a different place where actually you get more present, because what you're doing is through your work, you're challenging yourself to stay present through adversity. Rather than staying present through boredom, because that's what this is. Can you stay present through boredom? I can. Can you stay present while working and through adversity? I also can. You can. And you also can. And what I would ask you, if you're being honest with yourself, is what path do you resonate with more? Do you believe that you're incarnated to this earth to practice presence while sitting bored on a chair? Or do you believe that in spite that you will lose everything that you build, you'll lose all of it, that you're here to practice your spiritual growth and presence work while taking action and making the world a better place? I think most of us here would resonate with the latter. I do believe there's some people among us who would resonate with the former, and that's why they're here. There are people, I look at them, I'm like, I think your goal would be to just meditate at ashram for 50 years. I believe that about you. I can see it. That's a rare person. But I don't think that's the level that we're at. I think we're here to contribute, to evolve, to be at our best, and I think there's so many other levels that we can go to. So many other levels. This is why you'll hear me railing against a lot of this new cult. Well, it's not new, it's been around a while, but this resurgence of a culture of victimhood, blaming other people. I can't. I'm a victim. Not fair. I don't resonate with that. I believe that we chose our birth. You chose it. So stop whining and waiting for a handout. Again, two worst things you can do to a human being. One, make them believe and identify as a victim. Number two, give them a handout. As soon as you believe you're a victim, your reticular activation system will focus on the lack of opportunity and reinforce it. It skews your brain. It skews your testosterone, your hormones. It skews the serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine in the brain to where it can't function properly. Skews everything. Changes your focus, changes your ability to see opportunity. Convince someone they're a victim and give them a handout. What happens to rich kids? How do we grow into our potential? Through adversity or through complacency? You give a handout to look, everybody needs a handout sometimes. I had handouts when I was a kid. Everybody can have a point. That's what a social safety net is for. But it's called a social safety net, okay? It's a net, okay? You know, you run around, you fall, there's a net. That's why we have a net. It's not called a lifestyle, okay? Social Security lifestyle. It's called a net. You want to have a net. You want to provide people with things like education that creates self-sufficiency. If people don't get educated or they die off or they have a little small accident and they just die off, that same person, if you had a net there, could fix themselves and contribute back. They could be contributing again. So you want to get everybody contributing. We have incredible human potential in our society. There's incredible human potential. We can all be contributing members of society and make it better and add value. But the question is, as we're adding all this value, are we making life so easy that we're robbing people of the ability to grow? The purpose of making life easier and better is so that we can climb new mountains, not to just sit there, in like a little floaty tube with like an umbrella drink, just sitting there like, ooh, right? That's not the purpose of it. Not because there's not a space for that. I would actually very much enjoy to sit in a pink floaty tube in a pool with an umbrella drink. I promise you, I'll have a grand old time doing that. Me and Luke would probably do that. We'd rub each other's bellies. We'd giggle. There's a space for that. You have to have a space for free time, to giggle, to have fun. There's definitely a space for that. But if you do that too much, that's too extreme. That's way too extreme. It's going to create atrophy. It's going to create rust. It's going to hurt you. And most important of anything, it's going to rob you of the reason why you're born here. It's robbing you of the chance to grow. These challenges that you see in front of you are put here for you to grow. And there's an internal journey and an external journey. The internal journey is mastering your inner balance, state control, focus, humor, perspective, presence, inner resourcefulness, self-belief, the ability to summon highly resourceful states. But we also have an external journey. How does the world work? How do we create systems? In my mind, the creation of systems is like us as these grubby little humans, but in many ways, externally, the closest thing that we can get to divinity or godliness. Because God creates systems, but we can also create systems. Not the way God does. We're a, drop in the ocean compared to what God's done. Not even a drop in the ocean, by the way. The ocean would be the drop, and we'd be the drop in the drop of the drop of the drop. But the point is, building systems is beautiful. I love the creation of systems. I feel beautiful and connected to presence when I'm creating systems so that people can have jobs. I like that I can create jobs. I like that I can create value to society. I like that I can have a plan, architect it, fail at it, get frustrated, and then fix it, polish it, tweak it, and then make it work. Again, it's a great alternative to apathy, but also the bigger question is, as you go through those challenges, can you challenge yourself to stay present, calm, resourceful as you go through them? See, many friends of mine, they're incredibly present, very spiritual, but as soon as they get a parking ticket, they lose their minds. And I saw that, I audited that, I thought about that. Is that spiritual? Or is what they're doing is they're just creating this like kind of lifestyle, this sort of spiritual lifestyle, to where what they're doing is they're trying to surround themselves with an easy life, but they weren't challenged. Again, I'll bring you back to that same principle. If you're truly present to the moment, why can't you be present during work? Why is the conclusion of you growing spiritually that you aren't productive? Oh, because you're afraid you'll become too identified with the possession? You'll become too identified with the success? You'll become identified with your ego? You'll become attached to the outcome? Is that your fear? Guess what? Many of your greatest spiritual advancements will come from being attached to something and kind of moving away from yourself, losing it, and coming back to yourself. It's a leaving and a returning process. That's an incredible process of life that you can actually go through and you can experience. So for me, I think what I started this little talk what it was about was, in effect, I wanted to get you to think about your life in a larger perspective, right? Don't just say, I want the money. I want biological drives fulfilled. This is good. I'm good because I'm just following orders. I'm good because I think I'll go to heaven. I'm good because I'll get a reward. As long as you're in the punishment reward cycle, you're not awake. Ultimately, here's what being awake means in my mind, okay? The ego is like this default little personality that you're born with in case you never actually wake up. Waking up, what that means to me is you have control over your own state, you control your emotions, and then from that point of needing nothing, what would you do? That is, in effect, what you'd say about God, if you were to theorize about what God is, right? God, all-knowing, all-powerful, and still God went and created all of this for you. God created all of this out of love. God created all of this to be playful. God created all of this to create. So what would you do if you didn't need any money, you didn't need any validation, you had no fear, you didn't get tired, you had full control over your emotions, you could make yourself laugh until you cry whenever you want, your mind was incredibly sharp, incredibly intelligent, you were able to build systems, you were able to create from that perspective of just sharp intelligence, then what would you do from that point? Who would you be? That's what I think about. I remember one time I was on an airplane and I saw somebody studying the Bible. And my girlfriend at that time, she really wanted to sit beside me. And he was in first class. And she got selected for first class, and I was in the back. And as soon as I saw that she sat beside the guy reading the Bible, I could see in his pupils, and I could see he's a very spiritual guy. And I knew that inevitably what would happen is I'd go to the back, and I knew that he'd come to the back and he'd offer me to have his first class seat. I knew it from looking at his pupil for 2 seconds. What do you think he gained from walking? Within 2 seconds, I knew this guy's going to come back. He's going to tell me to take the seat up here. That's a pretty weird prediction to make. But it's actually not. It's actually really simple. How could I predict that he would do that? What do you think? Any guesses?
He already has everything he needs.
What is he reinforcing? By him choosing to sit at the back, what is he reinforcing? Yep.
Self, basically. His principle of going to heaven, but it's not selfless. It's selfish.
I think, in my view, okay, so you brought up a good point there, actually. What she was saying is that he may believe that that will get him into heaven. He might have seen a reward. And actually, based on what I was talking about, based on the information I gave you, actually, that was a really good response. I'm glad you mentioned that. I believe that even though he was bought into probably a mainstream view of religion, nonetheless, I also believe that you could just see in his pupil, he was in a state of non-resistance. He had a lot of high vibration in him. And so here's what I knew. By him sitting back there and giving me the front seat, think of it this way. It appears that he's losing and I'm gaining. No. Because what's happening is I'm getting more attached to the physical. Oh, I feel more comfortable because I'm here. And what is he training himself on? That he can control his emotions whenever he wants. He decides how he feels. Look, is it really that bad to sit in a seat with 3 people in the row instead of 2? No. No. It's not. No different than is it that bad to work. So by him doing that, he trained his mind to say, no, I'm the boss. You're not the boss. I'm the boss. Now, many of those autopilot aspects of our minds that we have and our bodies are beautiful. They're great gifts. The question is, who is the one riding who? Are they riding you, or are you riding those gifts? The thinking mind, which can be overactive, the thinking mind is still very powerful. You'll see me throughout the day. I pause, I start thinking, I'm processing things. Amazing. Thinking is amazing. The problem is when the thinking becomes so entrenched and there's no present energy, and now the thinking's running you and saying, I want this, I want that, and your life goes by in this pathetic haze of you fulfilling the drives of a slave master that you believe is you. You were a slave the entire time. Even if you were to get everything that your ego wanted, you were a slave to your ego. You never woke up, right? There was a great book I read called Sapiens, and they said that wheat is not the slave of humans. Humans are the slaves of wheat. I mean, who's the slave? You or your cat? Think about that one for a minute, right? Well, that's a weird thing to think about. But what it means is that, in effect, what you have is where these things that you think you want that are so good, arguably, and don't take any of this from me as dogmatic. You got to think about this for yourself. When I do an improvised, quick little seminar like this, my goal is not to tell you how to think. My goal is to encourage you to think. Okay? I'm just lobbing curveballs at you. That's what I'm doing right now, right? You're at bat right now, and I'm just throwing curveballs at you. Like, what do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? What do you think of this one? You're like, right? You're trying to hit it. I'm just throwing curveballs at you here to get you thinking. I'm trying to expand your mind a little bit. Any of the things I'm saying, you don't even know. I may not even believe. A lot of time I say things as a thought experiment that I don't even believe. Maybe life really just is all about getting that money. Might be. Oh yeah, right? Maybe. Who knows what I really think? I'm just up here dancing, right? Some want a dream. Who knows what I think? That doesn't matter. Who knows what I really think? I could lights out, knockout right now, heart attack like I referred to earlier, sitting here, oh, I'm dead, right? What does that matter? Just another human that expired. But from your perspective, what matters is that you're starting to think right now, starting to reconsider your life, and ultimately creating a life of your own design. Something that you built, something that you thought about, something where you didn't let someone else tell you what's cool and what's not cool. That's the purpose of what I want to talk about here today. I just want to get you to think, okay? That's it. Just want to get you to think. What you should have got from this was not, oh, I should think how Owen thinks. What you should get from this is, that's a different process of looking at things. That's what I want you to get out of this, okay? So can everybody here commit to making an effort to waking up, not following the path of least resistance, not being stuck in a punishment-reward system that you're not even aware of, not being a slave to some little entity in your brain that you think is you? Can everyone here commit to waking up, to having that second birth or that ongoing birth, that ongoing awakening process, and creating something out of your life? Because let me say this, there's a lot here to distract you, isn't there? There's a lot here to distract you. There's a lot of systems that's been created that's got you so locked in, it's hard to think above it or outside of it. The Matrix, it's so all-consuming. It's so up in your face. Imagine if there was just TV shows about this all day. That's all it was, just TV shows along these lines. Bigger questions of life. What is the meaning of life? The world would look pretty different. I'm not saying we got to do that, but imagine that. But instead, what kind of TV shows do you see? Violent, us versus them, petty, gossipy, diversion-based, mind-numbing, and some of it's good programming too. But what are you exposed to? So you come here, you come to me, you're sitting here in this room, you come to yourself. And the purpose of it is just to get you thinking in a way that you may not have thought before. Okay? So we're going to do some exercises, but that concludes the quick impromptu seminar portion. You guys enjoy yourselves? Thank you. I want to congratulate you for making it all the way through this video. I've really tried to challenge you, and again, this is a very different kind of video than you would normally see as far as a seminar. And the reason why is because I'm not just trying to hit you on a level of information, I'm trying to hit you on a level of what you'd call beingness. So in the video, I've tried to stay very present with you and really give you everything that I have to give. And so what I hope that you got out of the video is not just some information or thought experiments, but also that you can actually feel a change in your vibe. And this shift that I hope that you feel in your vibe, and you may feel it, you may not, but if you do, I hope that you can actually carry that with you throughout your day and just notice the different way that people respond to you, the different way that people are engaging with you, the different way that people might even be drawn to you, because you're coming from a really different, almost surreal kind of space that few people have ever encountered. I hope that you also notice, by the way that you perceive the world differently, and even just how effective you are, just being in a different, more empowered, present, and open state of mind. So really, that's what I'm trying to demonstrate to you here, and I'm trying to communicate this to you with a very, very outside-the-box style of teaching. So, just want to thank you again for participating in the video. We've got so much more to come. I'll see you soon.